Welcome to our exploration of one of the most profound economic crises in modern history, the Great Depression. This devastating period, which began in 1929 and lasted for over a decade, transformed the global economic landscape, profoundly affecting the lives of millions. In this video we will examine the causes, the key events, the responses to the Depression, and the lasting impact it had on the world. The Roaring Twenties. A prelude to the Depression. Before the Great Depression, the United States enjoyed a period of economic prosperity known as the Roaring Twenties. Following World War I, the country experienced rapid industrial growth, technological advancements, and a booming stock market. Consumerism reached new heights, with Americans buying cars, radios, and other mass-produced goods. However, beneath this prosperity, there were signs of underlying problems. The wealth was unevenly distributed, and many families struggled financially. Additionally, speculation in the stock market and an over-reliance on credit masked deeper economic instability. The stock market crash. October 29, 1929. The Great Depression is often said to have officially begun with the stock market crash on October 29, 1929, a day that became known as Black Tuesday. On this day, the stock market lost nearly $14 billion in value, about $250 billion in today's money, wiping out the savings of thousands of investors and leading to a widespread loss of confidence in the economy. The crash followed months of increasing stock market speculation, where investors were buying stocks with borrowed money, inflating stock prices beyond their actual value. When prices began to fall, panic set in, and millions of shares were sold off, triggering a domino effect. The spread of the Depression. 1930s. While the stock market crash was a catalyst, it was far from the only cause of the Great Depression. The following year, the country saw bank failures, rising unemployment, and a sharp decline in industrial production. By 1930, the U.S. economy had entered a downward spiral, and by 1933, 1/4 of Americans were unemployed. Key contributing factors to the Depression included bank failures. As banks failed due to bad loans and a loss of confidence, millions of Americans lost their savings. This led to a severe contraction in credit and further limited consumer spending and investment. Overproduction and declining demand. Throughout the 1920s, American farms and factories had produced more goods than could be sold. As demand dropped, prices fell, leading to widespread layoffs. International impact. The global economy was also affected. European nations, still recovering from the aftermath of World War I, were unable to pay back war debts to the U.S. The U.S. imposed tariffs, such as the Smoot-Hawley Tariff in 1930, which further reduced international trade, deepening the economic crisis. Dust Bowl. In the early 1930s, the Midwest and Great Plains experienced severe droughts and dust storms, devastating agriculture in a region already struggling. The Dust Bowl exacerbated the economic pain, forcing thousands of farmers to abandon their land. Unemployment and poverty. The Great Depression caused widespread unemployment. In 1933, the peak of the crisis, the unemployment rate reached about 25% in the U.S., and poverty levels soared. Families lost their homes, and hunger became common. The American government, under President Herbert Hoover, struggled to provide adequate assistance. Shantytowns, often called Hoovervilles, after President Hoover, sprung up in cities across the U.S. These were makeshift communities of homeless people, living in rudimentary shelters made from scrap materials. The widespread suffering from joblessness and hunger led to increasing frustration with the government's inability to effectively respond. The New Deal. Franklin D. Roosevelt's response. In 1932, Franklin D. Roosevelt was elected president in a landslide victory. Roosevelt promised a New Deal for the American people, a series of government programs and reforms aimed at providing relief, recovery, and reform. His administration tackled the crisis with a combination of bold actions that included Emergency Banking Relief Act, 1933. One of Roosevelt's first actions was to close all banks temporarily to prevent further withdrawals. This gave the government time to stabilize the banking system and only reopen banks that were financially secure. The Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, FDIC, was also established to insure deposits, restoring trust in the banking system. Public Works Administration, PWA, and Works Progress Administration, WPA. These agencies created millions of jobs by funding large-scale infrastructure projects, such as bridges, roads, and public buildings. The WPA also funded cultural projects, including theater, music, and art, which helped maintain the morale of the public. Social Security Act, 1935. This landmark piece of legislation created a system of unemployment insurance, pensions for the elderly, and aid for dependent children and the disabled. The Social Security program is still a key part of the U.S. social safety net today. Agricultural Adjustment Act, AAA. The AAA sought to boost farm prices by reducing production. Farmers were paid to leave land fallow or destroy crops, helping to raise prices and prevent overproduction. National Industrial Recovery Act, NIRA. This aimed to revive industry by promoting fair wages and working conditions and by encouraging cooperation between businesses and labor unions. However, parts of the NIRA were later declared unconstitutional. Labor rights. Roosevelt's policies supported labor unions in their right to organize, which helped improve working conditions for many American workers. The Wagner Act of 1935 legalized collective bargaining. While the New Deal did not end the Depression, it provided vital relief to millions of Americans and reshaped the role of the federal government in American life. The Depression ends in World War II. While the New Deal helped to stabilize the economy, it wasn't until the U.S. entered World War II that the Great Depression fully came to an end. The war effort led to a massive increase in industrial production, which created jobs and revived the economy. The U.S. government spent heavily on war supplies, which led to a reduction in unemployment and a recovery in industrial output. By the end of the war, the Depression had become a distant memory for many Americans, but the social safety nets and reforms introduced during Roosevelt's presidency would remain. Impact and legacy of the Great Depression. The Great Depression had a lasting impact on the United States and the world. Economic reforms. The New Deal permanently changed the relationship between the American people and their government. Social security, labor protections, and public works projects became foundational aspects of American life. Global effects. The Depression had a ripple effect across the globe, contributing to the rise of extremism and totalitarian regimes in Europe, such as Nazi Germany under Adolf Hitler. The economic turmoil of the 1930s helped lay the groundwork for World War II. Cultural impact. The Depression profoundly affected American culture, inspiring literature, music, and art that reflected the struggles of the era. Writers like John Steinbeck, with works like The Grapes of Wrath and songs like Brother, Can You Spare a Dime?, captured the spirit of the times. Psychological effects. The Great Depression deeply influenced American values and attitudes toward work, government, and social security. It reshaped the American dream, leading to greater expectations of government intervention and support. Conclusion. The Great Depression was a devastating event that affected millions of lives, yet it also transformed the political, economic, and social fabric of the United States and the world. It exposed the vulnerabilities of the global economy and reshaped the relationship between government and its citizens. Although the Depression itself is long past, its legacy continues to influence economic policies and the role of government in addressing economic crises.